Every wall, every corner, every window, every object in this home contains knowledge. You're about to go through a full Memory Palace walkthrough in this home that I've used as a Memory Palace for years. Now, most people live surrounded by fantastic Memory Palace options, but they don't see them because they don't think about what a memory palace really is. So there are many ways to think about memory palaces, but one way is to think of it as a memory circuit. It's something that's fixed in place where you're going to move through that same journey over and over and over again. And I'll walk you through several of the journeys that I've actually used and how I use them. But keep that in mind. It is something that is repeatable, and it's based on locations that are already in your memory. And circuits are also about energy. And where energy flows, your attention can go. So we want to discuss memory palaces in a particular way that we're going to get started with right now. Now, a lot of people say that you should start your memory palaces at the entrance, the opening door. But that's really bad advice. So let's put a key into that lock and close it forever. Here's why. Oh, and memory palaces also work better if you have red shoes. What I recommend is something like the master bedroom, or what I call the terminal station. And that's the dead end of the memory palace. So rather than starting at the beginning and leading yourself into a dead end where you have nowhere else to go, you start at the dead end and then you lead yourself to the exit. Then you can use the driveway, you can use the street, the mailboxes, the electricity poles, etc. And you avoid worrying that you're going to run out of space. You can't run out of space when you start in the dead end. So in this memory palace, this is the dead end. And when I used this memory palace, I started at this door, which leads to a shower. And then I moved to this corner behind me, then this wall behind me. Then there's another corner there, another wall here, another corner, and another wall. And then there's the door leading out into the hallway. So looked at from a different perspective, this is the door that I start at, then I move into a corner, into the wall, over the bed, to the wall that I'm facing now, which has a window, another corner, another wall, and then I leave out this room into the hallway. Now, why do it that way? Well, it's because it's almost like a circle within a square, and that allows me to not have to cross my own path or anything like that. I just have a clear, crisp journey through this room, out to the exit, and that leads to being able to use the next station and the next station and the next station. So we're going to talk about the hallway in a second because there's some little bit of finesse that you might want to consider in your own memory palaces. But at the end of the day, this is the principle. Start in a location that allows you to move towards the exit, both in rooms and in the memory palaces as such. So you're always able to add new stations. Now, there are 1,000,001 applications for the memory palace technique. You can use it for physics, you can use it for foreign language learning, you can use it for poetry. There's no way I'm gonna get an example that makes sense to everyone. Just rest assured that if the information is encoded in numbers, words, symbols, or anything else related to what you can speak through your mouth, because if you can describe a concept, you can memorize the words that describe the concept. So it doesn't matter what the information is really, as long as it's transmittable somehow, you can memorize it. So noting that there's no perfect example, I'm going to give you one, and forgive the camera if it shakes a little bit as I move around, but I want to give you a sense of how this all works. So one of my favorite poems is in a book called Eunoia, which means beautiful thinking, and it truly does represent beautiful thinking indeed. And so I wanted to memorize a couple of the poems. And the first line of the first poem starts, "Awkward grammar appalls a craftsman." Okay, so awkward grammar appalls a craftsman. I start on this door and I place an association that allows me to remember those words. We're not going to get deep into the associations and how they work, but basically awkward. If you ever saw or read the novel Red Dragon by Thomas Harris, there's a character named Francis Dollarhide. He says, "You owe me awe." So I have him here awkwardly saying that a grammar textbook owes him awe. Awkward grammar appalls a craftsman. Now for appall and craftsman, I have the St. Paul and I have someone I know who's a craftsman. Awkward grammar appalls a craftsman. And that works in a kind of pillar from top to bottom. And literally down here with my red shoes, we have a craftsman. Okay, so awkward grammar appalls a craftsman. And you can think of these walls and doors on walls as pillars. I call this the pillar technique. Awkward grammar appalls a craftsman. Now I then just move to the corner. Now this is a magnetic station. It's magnetic station 1. In the ancient memory tradition, they used the term loci, sometimes pronounced loci. I changed it to magnetic station because a lot of people just argue over the pronunciation of loci or loci. Latinists say that both go, but I like station because really what we're dealing with is like a subway station of the mind or a train station of the mind that connects through a railway track to the next station, and those stations never change. So in order to fluidly say awkward grammar appalls a craftsman, a data bard as daft as Zara damns stagnant art and scrawls an alpha, a slapdash arc and a backward slash that mars all stanzas and jams all ballads. What a scandal. Sometimes you trip over your own words, but that's okay. To do that, I have to be able to just follow the railway track from station to station to memorize it. And so the principle is that the next station is the corner because it follows the wall. This wall just happens to have a door. Now I go here. So if this is awkward grammar appalls a craftsman, this is a data bard as daft as Syrah. Now you might not know Syrah, and I know that, but nonetheless, that's what I memorized here. If it was some historical information, you know, like someone being born in 1888 or what have you, you would have images that remind you of 1888 in the right position of the order of the information that you're memorizing. Now, there's sometimes a little problem that people get caught up in that's not a problem at all. They say, well, then I have to memorize only lists. Well, no, that's not true. You don't have to memorize only lists. So if you are in language learning, for example, let's say it's a Latin phrase like, let's see, nihil minus est omnis occupati quam vivere. Now this is Latin and it means, it's from Seneca, it means we busy ourselves with the busy stuff of life and so forth. So it would be the same principle. Nihil minus est, and images for that, and then omnis occupati quam vivere. Now or vivere, pronunciation is a different topic, but the point is that if you memorize a vocabulary term, you can add a phrase later, and then you use the memory palace to get it into long-term memory, and then it escapes the linearity of the list. It's more of an advanced topic, but you can come visit me at magneticmemorymethod.com for more. So let's go back to our poem. Awkward grammar appalls a craftsman. A data bard, as daft as Zara, damns stagnant art and scrawls an alpha. And that is just going to carry on as we move through the memory palace like this. And it's going to have lines here and so forth. Now, I talked about the hallway, and the hallway is going to lead to choices, right? Because what we have here is another room, and we have a toilet, and we have the shower room, and then we have choices to make. So do we go into this room? Do we use the shower room? What's the best thing to do? Now, personally, what I do is I will leave areas out of memory palaces that are not convenient so that I can just have a motion directly to that exit without having to remember the journey. If I have to remember the journey, then it's not really a memory palace. This is a key thing to understand. Okay, so you want to make it that you just move as fluidly as possible towards your exit. And if you have to leave out various sections, that's fine. Now, I prefer to do that because I can easily make these individual little rooms their own memory palaces. And indeed, this little room is its own memory palace, used for a completely different thing. And there are various decision parameters that you can use that help you decide which content is best suited for which kinds of memory palaces. But at the end of the day, the key is just to have lots of memory palaces. And in my free course at magneticmemorymethod.com, you will go through some exercises that will help you make that fit. Now let's see if we can put this together and use our hallway. Awkward grammar appalls a craftsman. A data bard as daft as Zara damns stagnant art and scrawls an alpha, a slapdash arc and a backward zag that mars all stanzas and jams all ballads. What a scandal! And then it goes, a madcap vandal. Have to make sure I don't fall down the stairs here. A madcap vandal crafts a small black ankh, a hand stamp that can stamp a wax pad. And then I just keep going down the stairs. Now, when I use stairs, I tend to use just the top of the stairs, represented by this painting here, and then the middle of the stairs, which is right about where I am now, and then we have the bottom of the stairs. Okay? So, a madcap vandal crafts a small black ankh, a hand stamp that can stamp a wax pad. And it goes on. It's quite a long poem, and it goes through the place, out the exit. But that's the point, using the memory palace, so that it's a clear, crisp journey that doesn't interfere with itself. And then these other rooms can and have been used in different ways for different things. Now, an inevitable question is, can I reuse memory palaces? Well, yes, you can, and I do sometimes when the stakes are not that high, when I don't mind having some potential issues. For example, I didn't mind having potential issues when I gave a TEDx talk from memory using a memory palace in Kelvin Grove, Australia. And I've taught from that memory palace before and given examples and walkthroughs of that for a very, very complicated set of texts that involve the TEDx talk itself and also poetry, mantras in Sanskrit, several of them. And there's a very particular way that I reuse memory palaces. But at the end of the day, one way I don't recommend is overwriting text on top of text. Because right here, I've done that. And right here is another poem by Shakespeare, which is Sonnet 59, it must be. And it starts, let's see. If there be nothing new, but that which is hath been before, how are our brains beguiled? And it just follows that same sort of journey through the place. But you can see I'm just kind of like, oh, how do I start this? Is it really Sonnet 59? All that sort of stuff. But there's images for 59, there's images for every word. At the bottom of the stairs outside the door is, oh, for a muse of fire that could ascend the brightest heaven of invention, kingdom for a stage, princes to act, and monarchs to behold our swelling scene. And those things are all written on top of each other, and it can be a little bit difficult. So I don't recommend it, but I do it for my own experimentation, and I think you should experiment as well. But at the end of the day, you have so much space to draw upon, and all you have to do is prepare your memory palaces. So we've talked about the principles of starting in the terminal station and moving towards an exit, but there's a little bit more that I want to share with you so that you can hit the ground running. Let's talk about that next. Now, in order to really solidify the memory palace journeys that you create and make sure that they're based on what you remember rather than memorizing any location in order to use it as a memory palace, I highly recommend that you draw your memory palaces. Now, by draw, I don't mean be an artist. I just mean literally a simple sketch like this. I have no artistic talent whatsoever, or at least I don't draw upon any such thing in order to just get these sketches sorted out. And the reason why I do this is so that my brain consolidates the journey and I've weeded out any issues. Like, for example, leading myself into a dead end, which I might have done upstairs if I didn't allow myself to just go straight to the exit for the particular content that I was memorizing. Now, you can make little computer graphics and so forth, and this is a computer graphic of the layout of this memory palace, but I wouldn't use this to help me plan the memory palace, not at all. Why? Because I want to train my brain to see the memory palace as I understand it, and that's what a simple sketch using a pen in a notebook enables you to do. And I've received over the years, the 15 years that I've been teaching this, thousands of simple drawings from people who have finally said, I get it, I understand this memory palace technique, because they processed the space through their minds, through their hands, and then they saw the potential journey with their own eyes that they created. Then they set it and then essentially forget it because they just follow the plan. And that's the key. Because if you try to memorize locations, when you're starting to use memory palaces, what's going to end up happening is that you have to process the memory palace in memory at the same time that you're trying to add these images, like you owe me awe in that area that I just showed you. No, that doesn't work. Or at least it's way more harder work than it needs to be. So we reduce the cognitive load by thinking about the journey, Then we chart it out with a simple sketch. Then we set those stations like railway stations along a track, and then we just follow that track without having to think about it. Then the next thing you know, you've memorized whatever it is that you want to memorize so that you can carry on in life as the architect of your future that you're actually able to enable because you have the knowledge and the wisdom to do so. So I hope you enjoyed this, and if you want more information, get subscribed, hit that thumbs up. This is Anthony Metivier from magneticmemorymethod.com. And if you want to see details about how this applies to studying things like textbooks, go ahead, stick around, and watch my video on the Memory Palace technique for studying next.